and flexible battery cell group out of Baltimore. We were doing some really cool stuff with simulated muscle memory systems and working with bilateral amputees. It was in that environment that I learned that I really liked the entrepreneurial space, but also learned that I did not like being the 12th to 15th employee in the company. So I decided at that point that I was either going to make my own companies or figure out how to join groups that were more established. But I also recognized that I really liked the entrepreneurial space and had no idea how to actually start a company or what to start a company around. So I went back to Johns Hopkins. I ended up getting a master's in bioengineering, innovation, and design. Um, it's a one-year program focused in both developed and low middle income countries on medical device design, user needs identification, stakeholder incentive alignment, and product development pathways for medical devices. So it's how do you talk to doctors and how do you translate those conversations into products that are not just going to be something that can get through the FDA, but something that will actually be adopted and used. From there, I helped to co-found two different companies. One, non-invasive intracranial hypertension monitoring in the United States. That ended up being purchased by a joint effort between Johns Hopkins Medicine and University of Maryland Trauma Center, I believe. And then the other was non-invasive hemoglobinometry for low middle income countries. That ended up resulting in a licensing deal with the IntelliHealth and the DRK for use in countries like Tanzania, Kenya, India, and Nepal. That project actually ended up taking me all around the world for data collection. So I do have a fair bit of experience in what are the differences in medical devices and customer discovery processes internationally as well, and coordinated that with Japaigo. From there, I ended up thinking that I wanted to be more academically inclined. I ended up going to Georgia Tech, got my doctorate in bioengineering, focused on cell and tissue engineering. But in my second year, I joined the Tiger programs, technology innovation generating economic results. So commercially translatable research. How do you take advanced topics and convert them into real world products, which is very similar to what you all are learning here at UCR and INNOVAR. That program is done in coordination with CDL, Creative Destruction Lab, and I believe NSF's I-Core program as well. It might be the NIH version, but can go back and look at that at some point. And then ended up dual degree MBA for technology commercialization, innovation management therein. Out of that, I ended up founding Inside Optics. It was my most recent venture. That took me out to Washington. Here in Washington, I'm currently in the Pacific Northwest in the greater Seattle area. From that role, I've managed to build out a number of different things. I actually recently went through an M&A and took my exit from Inside Optics within the last few months. And in the interim, I've been able to do quite a few things. I've been a venture analyst for a number of different groups. I've worked with the NIH as part of their C3I program and DC3I program, and am now entrepreneur in residence here with you guys, UCR, and affiliate faculty for both University of Washington and Georgia Tech, teaching things like capstone senior design, innovation management, technology management, and all of those tend to primarily be guest lectures with the occasional full course here and there. So that's a little bit on me and my background. Jay, I tried to keep it to 5 minutes, but I am open to any questions if anyone has them. If you would like to learn more about me, I'll drop my LinkedIn in the chat as well as my personal site. And you all are welcome to reach out to me with any questions that you have. I will also put my Calendly in there so that you can book individual meetings with me if you would like to just dive deeper.
Thank you, Aaron. Let's give the silent applause for Aaron. Um, any questions for Aaron on any of his startup activities or something like that? Aaron, let me ask a question since no hands are raised. Uh, have you noticed any particular benefit to doing customer discovery interviewing
Oh God, yes.
startups?
So I'm sure you'll learn if you haven't already the difference between product push and market pull. Um, a product push framework is one in which you come up with a really good idea and then you try and find the people that are going to be the individuals that are going to purchase your solution. Market pull is the other way around. You go through and you have customer discovery interviews. You establish what the pain points for those individuals are. You look at what their needs landscape is structured as. And then from there, you identify what your market ultimately looks like, and then build your solution to fit that needs landscape. And when you do it in the latter approach, as opposed to the former, you effectively guarantee that a market exists based off of your proposed solution for solving those needs for your customers. And as a result of that, you're going to have a much easier time with your go-to-market. I'm personally of the opinion that you should always do customer discovery and needs validation first. But that also is very heavily baked into medical device design, right? If you're going to be going into medical devices, part of your design controls for the FDA in your quality system requires that your design inputs and design outputs are tied to user needs. So it's kind of an obligation in my field of expertise.
Okay, Stephen, then Brian.
Yeah, Aaron, nice to meet you. I'm curious, can you just kind of tell us, describe a little bit what you see the difference between the standard I-Core program and the I-Core for NIH? What are the key differences there? Um, how do they compare?
Yeah, so at the end of the day, they both resonate with each other very synchronously. You're still doing customer discovery, you're still presenting and pitching to advisors, but the core content and the duration of the programs is going to vary based off of whether or not you're doing a local version or a national version. I think NSF now has an intermediary version. There's constant evolution in there. The NSF program also comes with some money to go around the country and conduct those customer discovery interviews, or at least it did the last time I participated in an NSF. I've been much more involved with the NIH side of things now. The NIH has a strong focus on working with groups that are university driven, so they tend to focus more on STTR as opposed to SBIR, but they do have SBIR focus groups for programs with government agencies like NIBIB or the VA. So it tends to be more professional. At the student level, there is now a newly launched program with the NIH that is the DC3I program. And if you're interested in running that in addition to INNOVAR, I'm more than happy to make introductions for teams, see if it's a fit from both a team level and from an NIH level, and help to bridge that gap for anyone that might have an interest there.
Great, thank you.
It looks like Brian has a question. Yeah.
Hey, Aaron. Great to meet you, and thanks for your insight. So, I had a question. Sounds like you have a very deep technical background with your master's and your PhD, and then went back and got an MBA. How do you think the science and the business kind of marry up and complement one another? Because not everyone has your kind of background, right? So a lot of
Yeah,
people either are in the science track or a lot of people are in the business track. You have kind of
yeah.
a combination of the two. So do you need one more than the other? And when you created cart startups and what roles did you play just kind of big picture on that.
Yeah, so you need both. You can do just one or just the other, but in reality, you do need to have both the business and the science. It doesn't need to be entirely contained by a single individual. You can build a network and you can have advisors or supporting groups to bring out greater information and details. But the short answer is actually not my answer. It is an answer from one of my business professors and one of my mentors. And that is you can come up with a cure for a specific type of cancer, but if that cancer treatment isn't profitable, you're going to have a much more difficult time creating an impact for those patients, right? At the end of the day, you create a cure for cancer, people are going to implement it and it's going to be utilized. But if it is profitable, it's going to be utilized much more heavily, much faster. It's going to be spread much more broadly, and you're going to have a bigger impact overall, right? There's a lot more nuance to it than that, but I think that summarizes it very well. As far as like educational perspective, if you have a strong science background and you're considering an MBA, I would make an argument that you can probably learn everything you need to know and do without getting that MBA. But I liken that to like getting a Spanish English dictionary and then trying to move to Spain. You can move to Spain and survive just fine, right? All those tools exist. But if you took a class and you have a Spanish English dictionary, you're going to do a little bit better and you might be able to adapt a little faster, right?
Ken?
Yeah, Aaron, I just had one question, which is really just on a personal side. Can you tell us like the story of what during your entrepreneurship career, one of the most exciting things that occurred to you, be it an event or something which had occurred? Love to hear that.
Yeah, it's tough. There's a lot to choose from. Um, from a like purely excitement and memorable event directly. I gave a pitch at the Fox Theater in Atlanta to a room of over 1,500 or 2,000 people. That one was particularly memorable, not because of the audience size, but because the morning of when we were doing our practices, I was at, I think it was supposed to be a 2 minute pitch. So very fast, or it was supposed to be a 3 minute pitch. And that is already very fast for pitching to an audience. But when I got there and I gave my pitch and I came in at 2 minutes and 58 seconds, they looked at me like I was out of my mind and they said, "What are you doing? This is a 2 minute pitch. You need to cut a minute out of your entire pitch, and you need to do that within the next 4 hours." So that was a whirlwind and truly a wild experience. From like an impact and like one that has moved me. When I was doing the project for the non-invasive hemoglobinometry for prevention of maternal anemia, we were like driving out until the road ends and then driving until the dirt path is no longer available and then walking another 15 to 20 kilometers to get to the first shack of the rural villages that we were trying to service with this product. And that was at least for me, there was one moment where like we got out there and the first thing that the mother that we were visiting did was hand me her, I think it was probably like a 6 month old. And she just handed me the 6 month old and is just like, great, glad you're here. I'm going to go chat with these people over here, and you're going to hold my baby and entertain the children while I talk to the translators because I need a break and you can just have the baby for a second. So it's just, there's a lot of inherent trust in just like, we are there to help them and making that like person to person connection with no ability to actually have a communication, like verbal communication with them, was really moving to me.
Those are great stories. Thanks.
Okay, I'm going to move on to the next subject. I know there might be some other questions, and Aaron, if you could stick around and look in the chat and see what those are, that would
Yeah.
be useful. But I'd like to move along to Brian Subb because we've got triple action in today's first hour.
Yeah,
And
please
so,
do. And if anyone wants to book time with me, I've put all of those links in the chat
yes,
for everyone. Happy to dive into more. And I only really highlighted 3 projects, but I've overseen probably close to 70. So spanning a massive range that's outside of medicine as well. So happy to provide my expertise as we get more involved.
very good. So Brian has already jumped ahead and put up his first slide. And I just wanted to say that we're honored to have him as our speaker tonight. He is the Senior Executive Director of a Technology Partnerships Office, and his specialty is in the tech transfer area, where he manages a team of licensing officers. And he has been with UC Riverside for, I think, at least 10 years. He's graduated from both Michigan State and UC San Diego, where I used to roam. And he's very knowledgeable in the area of intellectual property and does a lot of work for the spinouts for UCR. So welcome, Brian, and thank you for agreeing to speak with us.
Thanks, Jay. Thanks for the intro. It's great to see and meet everyone. I know I was at the first meeting, and some were in person and some were electronic, virtual. So it's great to be here. Um, yeah, so they asked me to talk about intellectual property, right? And so this is more kind of general intellectual property. I see there's some UCR affiliated folks, faculty, students, and then there's some community folks. And at the end, we'll, if there's time for questions, might kind of get into some of the differences in how we handle intellectual property here at the university versus just a undergraduate student or a community member. So all right, so taking an idea into a product or service, it takes time and money, but also there's got to be a way to protect investments, right? So when you go on Shark Tank or when you watch Shark Tank, and the sharks are asking, well, how do you prevent others from copying you? One of the biggest and one of the best ways is intellectual property, right? Um, so, I guess similar to owning a house and physical property, you can capture and document new ideas and creative works as intellectual property and own it, sell it, license it, and moving forward. So, owners of IP, you can actually prevent others from using your intellectual property. And then agreements can be made to actually allow you to have access to that intellectual property. And we'll get into some of the details of what the intellectual property is. So there's 4 main types of IP. One is patents, and I have a slide on each of these. So it's new ideas, new inventions, new compositions of matter, new methods, for for whatever it might be. It could be a drug, it could be a device, it could be a widget, but something that is new, useful, and non-obvious. Copyrights are literary and artistic works. think of books, think of photographs, think of blueprints, think of musical scores. So those are copyrights. Trademarks are images, symbols, logos, or words, and they also include regional representations. And then trade secrets are the fourth. So, and those are kind of you just what it says, right? You keep them in confidence. You don't tell them to anyone, and you have to really protect that, because once that trade secret is out of the bag, then there's nothing really you can do about it. What's going on here? Oops. All right. Okay. So patents. Patents are issued by the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office here in the U.S. There's three types of patents. There's a utility patent, there's a plant patent, and a design patent. And the most common type of patent is a utility patent. So there's some usefulness to what it is that you're trying to protect. Like I said, it's new, novel, and non-obvious. It could be materials, it could be methods, it could be really just about anything except, like formulas and things that occur in nature can't be protected. But what it does is, so you have to tell everyone how and what to make it, what it's made out of, how it's made. So you have to give it written description that is enabled, right? So you're trying to kind of tell everyone in the world to say, okay, this is how we do it, how we make it, what it consists of. And in return, you get a time-limited monopoly to exclude others, right? So for a utility patent, it's 20 years from the date of filing. So that's your kind of exclusivity period, where you can prevent others from practicing your invention, right? But one thing to note is having a patent doesn't mean you can actually practice your own invention, right? You can exclude others from practicing your invention, but it may not mean that you can practice your own. And an example is if, the most simplest example is, if you develop the new windshield wiper for your car, right? You can't actually use your windshield wiper without the car, right? And so if there's a patent to cover the car, then you can't use your windshield wiper. So you might need to go get a license to be able to that car to be able to actually practice your invention, right? So that's one thing to keep in mind when you get a patent. It's to exclude others from practicing, not to allow you to, because you may need to get other rights to do that. Plant patents are asexually reproduced plants. So we have quite a few here at the university, being an agriculture school. We have new citrus varieties, we have new avocado varieties, we have new turfgrass varieties, asparagus varieties, and those also give you about 20 years of protection from the date of filing. And then design patents are more kind of ornamental. So they don't have any utility. So like a website, the actual, what a website looks like, or the Coca-Cola bottle. So like the design of the Coca-Cola bottle is a design patent. The design of the iPhone, the original iPhone with the rounded corners with the little squares as apps, that was a design patent as well. So that's kind of what we talk about when we talk about patents, right? So once you have filed a patent application with the U.S. Patent Office, you can put patent pending on there. And then once you have an issued patent, you can put, patented. And so on the right is pictures of the light bulb patent from Thomas Edison, and a cover page of a patent there. So the next one is copyrights, and you'll see it. Copyrights are C, identified with a C in a circle. You see that everywhere. Like I said, books, music, film, drawings, paintings, photos, sculptures. Software is copyrights. Blueprints is copyrights. And copyrights exist the moment you put them down in a tangible form. So the moment your fingers hit that keys and the keys on your computer, and you type a document in Microsoft Word or Google Docs, that becomes a copyrightable work, right? The moment you take that photo, it becomes a copyrightable work. And You don't have to register copyrights with the Federal Copyright Office. So we have the U.S. Copyright Office here, similar copyright offices across the world. But if you believe someone is infringing on your copyrights using your book, using your photo, you do need to register it with the Copyright Office before you can file an infringement lawsuit, right? So, if you write your thesis or if you write, a one pager for marketing purposes, you can put, copyright C with the circle 2025 and your company name at the bottom, and you don't have to register it. But the moment you want to try to sue somebody or bring an infringement suit, you do have to register it with the Copyright Office. One of the things about so we've got that, and I've got a couple of examples or why IP is important in a future slide there. Trademarks distinguishes a good and service. So logos are typically trademarks. You can have sound marks. So like the roar, I think of MGM, the lion for movies, that's a sound mark. So it really helps you distinguish a good or service because certain marks carry a certain level of quality, right? So the Nike swoosh, the McDonald's, the Starbucks, the Louis Vuittons, those carry some sort of like, hey, we've got a reputation here. We're meant for high quality. So you've got trademarks there. Trademarks are they go on in perpetuity so long as you use it commercially. And you have to defend your trademark. So if someone is illegally using your trademark and you just let them use it, then you might lose your trademark yourself, right? So if you identify infringement of your trademark or someone else using your mark, you do have to enforce your trademark. Otherwise, it could become kind of generic, right? And things that have gone generic are like an escalator or aspirin. I think those used to be trademarks, but now they're just kind of generic terms, and so there's no trademark behind them. I think Google almost has become generic, right? So when you do a web search, you're using Google to do a web search, but a lot of times people refer to it as just I'm going to Google something, right? And so, but Google is working hard to make sure that they're trying to prevent their mark from going generic. So you've got trademarks, and then the last one is trade secrets. Again, the most famous trade secret is the Coca-Cola formula that we have here, and you have to make efforts to keep it secret, right? So whether that's secrecy agreements, that is, keeping it under lock and key and only having, a few people have access to it, having contracts and saying that they can't disclose it. If I'm not mistaken, I don't think any one person knows the entire Coca-Cola formula. They have it parsed out. And because once that Coca-Cola formula gets known, then there's really nothing protecting it anymore, right? So you've got that. Just some IP in the news, and this is over the last, maybe 10 or years. So, when Apple and Samsung first came out with their phones, they were under years-long battle about patents. This was both utility patents and design patents. Amgen about what is patentable, are antibodies patentable or not? UC Santa Barbara has sued a bunch of distributors of LED light bulb because manufacturers were infringing on their IP. One of my favorites, does a monkey own their copyright, right? So this is, I think there was a journalist or a photographer put down their camera, a monkey came by and picked it up and shot a selfie of it, right? And so the question was, who owns that photo, right? Just because I own the camera doesn't mean I own the photos taken on that camera, right? It actually is the person that takes the photo owns the copyright to that photo. It doesn't matter what they use. And this was, can a monkey own a copyright, right? And so ultimately they decided a monkey can't own a copyright. But just think about it. Every time you go on vacation and you give your phone to someone to say, hey, can you take a picture of me of this, whatever behind me? Who owns that photo? Is the person that you just gave the phone to take that photo, right? So it's not you. So technically they are the owners of that copyright. But and then another recent copyright infringement case is the photo of Prince. and the Andy Warhol Foundation made all of these derivative works, and ultimately the Supreme Court found that that was infringing the photographer who took the original photo of Prince. Um, so IP is important, right? So and having IP, there's value there, right? And so to protect your IP, one thing that, especially in patents, is you can't make it publicly known, right? So if you have a public disclosure, if you post it online, if you make a video, if you put a poster, if you present it, and you disclose it in an enabling way, so it kind of is enough information for someone skilled in the art that they can recreate it, that is a public disclosure. And in most of the world, you can no longer get IP protection, right? So you really have to be careful on how much you disclose, what you disclose, and do you have you filed for IP protection before you disclose it? So just be careful on your disclosures. Don't offer to sell, especially in your customer discovery interviews. Don't, you're not saying I'm selling you this or I'm giving you an offer to sell you a product. You're really, and I think that's part of the reason why they tell you not to talk about the technology, right? The customer discovery interviews is to learn about customer input, customer feedback, and not to try to sell them something. You don't want to disclose too much of your technology without some sort of confidentiality or non-disclosure type of agreement. Yeah, so I think, the second bullet here is, I think, most important, kind of in an academic setting, going and submitting an abstract, and that abstract is detailed enough that would be considered a public disclosure, right? Presenting a poster board at a conference, that could be considered, everything that's on that poster board can be considered a public disclosure. Talking about something on a blog, or TikTok, or Instagram, right? Anything online, anything public, even defending your thesis, right? So the thesis that you write and the thesis defense, that's, unless it's a closed environment, most of the time your thesis defense anybody can walk into, that is a public disclosure. So keep that in mind. Yeah, so you can't offer it for sale, right? You can't try to sell something, your technology, because the minute you try to sell it, that would be considered public, making it public. And so talking with an attorney, IP attorneys in particular, I think is important for faculty and graduate students that are here at
Brian, we just lost audio.
Yeah. Okay. I don't hear me either. Man, that's like a good movie going out of tune.
He's not muted though.
No, can you guys hear me?
Yes,
All
Yeah.
right, I'm
you're
gonna
back.
get off my earbud here. All right. So yeah, so we've got that. So for the class here, like I was mentioning, just keep it, when you're talking about your technology or your unique features, keep it at a very high level, non-specific, very vague. Don't offer it for sale. And like I was saying, I don't know where I cut out, but for UCR faculty and UCR graduate students, any questions on intellectual property, you can come talk to our office. All that IP belongs to the university, so we'll file and we'll protect. We'll work with you to help make sure that it is protected. And it's not patent or publish. You can do both. And so we just need to make timing right. And then for the community members, we do have, I think if you talk to your mentor, we do have kind of a startup toolkit where there is a number of IP law firms that have, said that they'd be willing to work with some of our entrepreneurs and our startups. Some have discounted rates, some have other types of packages that are available, and we can recommend or provide a few law firms that are in kind of our network. That you can talk to. And general questions, you can talk to myself or you can talk to anyone in my office. So that's it for me. And I see a question from Steve.
Yeah, that was great, Brian. Thank you. I have a quick question and maybe ask you to expand a little bit on another thing. So the quick question is algorithms, computer code, that sort of thing, is that covered by copyright?
Yes, yeah. The code itself is copyrights, but if the underlying algorithms are a process or a method, you could potentially get a patent, a utility patent on the process and the method, and then couple that with the code to have kind of that two layers of protection.
Okay. And then the other point I wanted to make was that from investor perspective, we frequently uh, we frequently are positively impressed when an entrepreneur has a series of patents, but they also do a freedom to operate assessment, even an informal one, which allows them to commercialize their product without infringing on other patents. Um, can you talk a little bit about FTO and what your view of that is and how the university feels about that?
Yeah, I think freedom to operate, FTO is the short term for freedom to operate. I think is very important. As a company or as a startup looking to commercialize, you do want to look at the space and say, okay, can I mentioned a patent excludes others from practicing, but it may not allow you to do it, right? So doing a freedom to operate search says, okay, where is this technology or where is this product in the space? What kind of other IP is there? Am I infringing on other IP that I need to go get a license on? Or is there some white space that we have the freedom to operate? And that's kind of where the term freedom to operate comes from. So, freedom to operate now, you can use online tools, you can use AI tools, you can hire a law firm to help you. There's a lot of firms that will, you pay them and they'll do a freedom to operate kind of search for you. But at the end of the day, it's ultimately going to decide on, in a patent, there's claims. And it says, I claim, my invention claims to do A, B, C, and D. It's got to infringe on those A, B, C, and D's. And so lawyers will take and look at a product or service and they'll do a claim chart. They'll look at, okay, this claim says this, my product, does it do this? Does it do that? Does it, um, so yeah, at the university side, we protect the IP and then we license it. And so we would expect our licensees to do the to operate. And so we don't guarantee that our IP infringes on others. We just say we have our IP, whether it's issued or not, or it's pending, and it's the licensee's responsibility to conduct that freedom to operate.
Great. Thanks. That's great. Thank you.
So,
Krista?
Yeah, thank you, Brian, for sharing. I have a lot of questions, but the one that recently came up was grant money. Are you able to write in lawyers for grant money?
So it depends on the grant. Some grants allow you to, and you won't necessarily put in lawyer. You just put in patent protection or patent cost, and some of that will be for attorneys. But some grants don't allow you to, and so it just really depends on the grant and the sponsor.
Thank you.
So one thing on the grants though is if you submit a grant and that grant is going to be published, because some agencies, nonprofits, or organizations actually publish all of their grant proposals that they receive, then you don't want to put anything confidential in there, right? And
or figure out how to protect your confidential information, put it as an appendix or put it in as a side document. So you do need to make sure that those grant opportunities you're clear. Like federal grants, usually they don't publish, federal grants, so you can disclose information in there. You can mark it as proprietary so they don't publish it. But some agencies or some granting organizations do publish, so just be careful for that. Mario?
Yeah, Brian, when a company, for instance, engages into conversations with a corporate partner and the partner pays for some sort of co-development, um, who owns the IP? When it's something that is being developed, being paid by, again, that relationship that you are establishing with a corporate partner. And follow-up question is, if you don't get paid for it, can you automatically assume that you own whatever it is that you are doing with that corporate partner, or all this is just something that needs to be written under conditions of engagement?
Yeah, there is no just de facto standard. I would make sure IP is a big piece of whatever collaboration agreement that you're working with for corporate partners. Um, you know, y- you know, when you're trying to outreach and talk to corporate partners, you don't want to go in and saying, "Well, I won't talk to you until you sign this NDA," because that's just going to put off most corporate partners, right? So at some point, you have to have kind of a high level overview and a description to whet their appetites and gain their interest. And then maybe the next meeting or the second or the third meeting, you want to say, hey, we want to get into the details now, so we want to sign an NDA. But I would push for, you know, you owning the IP, you being the company that's the small startup that's owning the collaborating with a larger company. If it's truly a collaboration, at UCR, what we typically say is if a corporate partner funds us, any IP that we develop independently solely with UCR inventors, we own. Any IP that the corporate partner develops on their own with corporate partner inventors, they own. And then if we have joint inventors, then we jointly own, right? That's our kind of default standard. Um, but sometimes companies will say, I'm paying you to do something. So you're just providing a service for me and I own everything, right? So that's a fee for service model. And you know, if that's the business you want to get into where you just provide a service and they pay you to do that service, then I would say you do give up, you probably will have to give up rights to that IP. But if it's truly a collaboration, I would push for that similar type of model that we use here at UCR.
Thank you.
All right. So I know I've taken up way too much time, so I apologize, Ken. And if you have questions, you can reach out to me directly.
So that's wonderful. Let's give a UCR round of applause to Brian for a wonderfully informative presentation and answering all questions. Thank you so much. Uh, Program note, it's about 10 to 6, so I think we should expect that Ken have 15 to 20 minutes. So that would mean that the second hour will just be 50 minutes long or so instead of the usual hour. And I think that's totally possible as long as we keep the team presentations in the second half of the class to the 4 minutes and the feedback to be about 4 minutes. We should have plenty of time. So again, thank you, Brian. And turning the page to our next speaker is Ken Gruys. And Ken has been working with the INNOVAR and the ICOR program as long as I've been here. And I think he joined a little bit before me. He's not only senior advisor to technology partnerships, but he's a professor and director of a master's degree team project at the Keck Graduate Institute. And along with that, he's had an illustrious career as a PhD chemist, working for large big tech, big ag. And we're happy to have him to talk about the commercialization roadmap, something he's helped develop for us and for many other places where he's worked. Ken?
Thanks, Jay. I'm going to go to presentation mode here. And I presume everyone can see that okay. So what I'm going to talk about, commercialization roadmap, is just, in my view, is one of the most important things that you have to do as you're moving your technology along. Another thing I will talk about a little bit later is the go-to-market strategy. And the go-to-market really is a very important component to the commercialization roadmap. And simply is, what do you need to do to get your thing, your product to your customer? And so that's what we're going to talk about. So what I wanted to do here is just kind of start out and just have you just kind of imagine that you're pitching your idea to investors, okay? And it's a really great idea. And what you've done in the class so far is you've really learned a lot about your particular product as it relates to the importance to your customer, and is it really highly valuable for them. And so if I'm trying to, let's see here, get to the next one. There we go. Okay, so with the work that you've done so far, you've determined that there's a market. And hopefully what you've also determined is that your product has an attractive market size. And, through looking at what else is out there, that you've got something which is novel and it has a competitive advantage, either because it's better, it's cheaper, or both. And so you've got something which really there. And then you have to ask, if you're sitting on that panel, what would you want to know next? You've convinced me of all these other things. And this is what the commercialization roadmap is about. It's really being able to tell this panel, or tell whoever you're talking to, is, okay, I've got this great thing and I know exactly how I'm going to get there. Okay, and I'm going to describe to you, at least at a high level, the steps that are going to be required for me to get my product to the market. And with that, and also telling them, and by the way, this is how much it's going to cost to do that, then you're well on a way to convincing the group. Is like, okay, I think these people know what they're talking about. Okay. And the thing is, with the roadmap, you also have to decide how you're going to do it. Within this class here, I know that we've got different thoughts of how this would occur. There's some that, say, from the university, they've got a great technology, but the plan really is going to be about licensing. We're potentially selling the idea to the company. You're going to be doing a startup, well, bringing that market with your startup. But let's say if you're already an existing company, you have to figure out how I'm going to do this new product that, perhaps, even if it's really quite an innovation, means you're going to have to run your company differently. So these are all the kind of things that you have to consider when you're putting together your roadmap. So what really is it? I consider it's a very essential planning tool for you, and also a communication tool to your investor, or to whoever it is you have to convince, in order for you to move along, that this is really important to move forward with. And it's really simply a timeline. It captures, what are the important milestones, the work, and generally this is at a high level, but not so high level that it doesn't convey what it is you need to do, but it's not into the weeds at all. And then, as I mentioned before, what's also really important is you have to also describe, well, what's the funding that's going to be required for you to do this. And so then the question is, well, how do I turn? What are these things? And a couple of things that come to mind for me that I would recommend for you is, first of all, you've done a number of customer interviews, and you should have some insights for them that should help inform what are the most important milestones that I need to make sure to get done over a certain period of time in order for me to be able to go forward. And there can be, depending on your technology, there can be assortment of different ideas. And I just list a few of them here. Myself being a technology person, I always think about things like, well, or technology features, are they fully developed? If I put some particular specifications on my product, have I met those? Do I need a certification in order to be required? In the area that I worked in the past, there's lots of regulatory approvals that are there. All of those have to be considered and put into your roadmap and considering amount of time and what it is that you have to do to make sure that you accomplish those particular milestones. And generally what I find is that it works, you know where you want to be in the end. So consider that and start working backwards about the things that you have to do. And that will also help you formulate how much time that's going to take. You don't want to guess at this. You want to do this in an informed way. So some of this you'll know, some of this you're going to have to research a bit to know, if I've got a regulatory approval, what's typical regulatory approval for a new pharmaceutical products or for a new GMO crop? What does that really mean? What does that take? So you're going to have to find out a few things, but clearly some of these things would be very important in order for you to be able to market your products. So what I'm going to show you now is both instructions, but also here on the right part of the slide is a tool that can help you formulate and put this together. So the instructions are on the left. I won't go through those in detail. The tool on the right is really a way to kind of think about some of the things that you need to do, just simply that. And you could put those in here. We've organized those in rows. The last row, as you see at the bottom, is the funding needed. It's a very important one. But these things to do are examples. It's not necessarily all of yours. Do you need a partner or not? Maybe you don't for your product. But if you do, when does that have to occur? And at the very top of that graph, you see, well, there's a timeline. And what's the month? What's the year for all of that? So this grid is simply meant to be a tool that you can use to start just jotting things down as you're putting together your roadmap. And the template itself that we provided is this one. So it simply is a timeline here, and then putting in the milestones. In this particular case, we've got 1 through 5. Maybe you've got some more. Also, the timeline here may be different for you depending on what your product is. Maybe you're really close right now, and what you need to divide things up would be in quarters or semi-annual type of thing. It's really up to you and where your product stage is. What we do ask is to be thinking at 5 years or less, not to be carrying this out for 10 years, but thinking about, in 5 years. And the next slide here is just a generic example of how one might look. And as you can see, and if you look through that, this isn't highly detailed, but it does give a pretty good idea of what's needed, in this case, year by year. And and then also how much it costs. Pretty simple here. Again, not highly detailed, but enough so that at least if I'm looking at it, if I'm on a panel, I get a pretty good idea of what it is that you're going to do and how much it's going to cost. Another example, if you want to get creative, and this is actually one from a previous team, and I think we have this in the template too, but it's the same thing, but it's perhaps a little more colorful way. You can add little pictures or symbols. If you feel so creative, by all means, you could use something like this. But the more simple template that I showed just in the previous slide will work just fine. So that's the commercialization roadmap. And from there, what I'd like to do is talk about a very important aspect of your roadmap, and that is, what's your go-to-market strategy? And first, I really need to acknowledge my colleague, Steve Sharp. These are really his slides, and he was kind to let me be able to talk about them. I hope I do justice to him here, Steve. So I'm going to start out here actually thinking about when you think about go-to-market, what it's really about. And if we look kind of historically, the way people viewed their new product was, hey, I build another mousetrap, you know, the world's going to come to my door. The next would be here, which is really the newer version of it, is what from the movie Field of Dreams, if you've seen that, if you build it, they will come. Well, the reality is that as you guys have already found out, it's all about the customer, and it doesn't really work that way anymore. And really, the truer statement for today is an old statement from quite a while ago from Marshall Fields. Oops, sorry about that. And that is in 1905, he said, it's very simple. Customer is always right. Okay. So your go to market strategy is all focused on what is it I have to do um, to what's my strategy to get my product to my customer. And then another thing, if you look at, well, why is it so different today? And a lot of it is just how things have evolved. And I won't go through this in detail, but it's really kind of interesting if you look at how things have evolved from the historical perspective, say how population has grown, what were most important things, say culturally, way back in the 1800s and 1900s, it was really like make life tolerable, extendable for most people. And then today, we're geared towards, well, we need to have instant gratification. That's just how we are. And so that is why things have evolved very much to innovation being customer driven. Okay. And by the way, if everyone is wondering, the information age, what's significant about 1993? Anyone kind of guess quickly? And I can't see the chat. Something big happened in 1993.
I believe the internet,
Hint?
right?
Pardon?
Internet?
You got it. Yeah. Al Gore invented the internet. Oh, no, that wasn't right. The internet became public, and just think about how our lives have changed since then. So, definition of go-to-market strategy. I think Steve nailed it here. It's the how. What are you selling it? Who are you selling it to? You guys kind of already figured this out. Now it's really how will you reach your target market? And then how will you promote those products and services as well? So, and this is, if you guys might recall from earlier video at the start of this class, this is all a part of the business model canvas. And the important thing here in particular canvas is really, how do we provide those value propositions to your customer? And it's really through the relationship channels. Okay. Through your interviews, you've already created some innovation, some channels of the relationship channels. And so those are important things in consideration from the business model canvas point of view. Okay. I like this particular slide because as you're thinking about you go to market, you really need to be incredibly honest with yourself and whatever your technology is. And really, this helps guide where you should go. I think most of us will have a tendency to think, hey, what I've invented, what I've put together, it is revolutionary. It's innovative. And it's everyone in this world's going to want it. Well, that might be a little bit of an exaggeration, but I think we all kind of think of this is really the greatest thing to come around. You need to be really honest with yourselves because the reality is truly revolutionary, innovative new product that really changes things. They're actually really quite rare. And there's not a lot of examples out there, but some that are really important. I'm going to talk about one that I know very personally myself because I was involved in it for years. But you really have to be sure of how you fit in. if you don't have something which is revolutionary and innovative, that's perfectly fine. There's a lot of space and opportunity for you to get your products to the market if it provides value to the customer that they haven't realized yet. So it's okay if you're not revolutionary or innovative with your particular product, you still can very well have great value for your customer. So prominent go-to-market strategies. Here's some examples. I won't go through all of them, but you can kind of imagine, what it was. Think before, really razors and razor blades existed. That was probably one of those, you could say, innovative, revolutionary thing because prior to disposable razors or razor blades, it was a much different, world. If you look at things like at State Farm, Verizon, how they bundle things together. Okay, is that hugely innovative? Perhaps it's debatable, but it was pretty good go-to-market strategy for them. Southwest does the kind of the opposite, unbundling, giving customers more particular choices, so on and so forth. I wanted to point out one of at the very last bullet is what I call dramatically evolve your company and sub-license. When you have a truly innovative, changes almost the world type of product, and it's incredibly valuable, you really have to think about how am I going to do this and how evolve. The example I give here with Monsanto, who really was a company that invented transgenic crops with highly valuable traits. Prior to that period, Monsanto was a traditional chemical company. But when they were able to put together things that were of incredibly valuable to their customer, which is the farmer and the grower, they realized we have to completely change what this company is about. So rather than a traditional chemical company, Monsanto evolved dramatically into a seed company because the value that was created for the grower and for the farmer is built into the seed. And so whoever sells that seed is the one who's going to be getting some of the profit and some of that value as well. So what they did is they changed completely as a company. And you think of a Fortune 100 company doing this, it was pretty amazing. And the other thing that they did is because what they created was so novel and so valuable that the other major seed companies wanted to have a sublicense or a license to that technology. And so that's the other strategy that they involved to create the market share, because they evolved to a seed company, but they didn't evolve to the biggest seed company. There are other big players that were out there. So they sub-licensed the technology there. Anyway, it's an interesting example. It rarely happens, and it rarely happens to really large companies. But you can probably think of some of your own examples of things that really changed our world overall. So updated, and this is from Steve as well, as hopefully from this class, you've learned the customer will tell you what they need if you ask good questions and you listen well. And that will be the key to your go-to-market. And then also in thinking about your commercialization roadmap. So with that, I went through pretty fast, and I know we're a little bit behind in time, but if there's some particular questions needed, happy to address those.
Yes.
Hey, Ken, just a comment. You did a great job. On the slide that shows the generic strategies, I think it's slide 16. I noticed a typo that I imposed on you, so I apologize. Under World of Warcraft, it should say addiction/affinity for World of Warcraft, not addition. I just saw that. Yeah, so I mean, and literally, some of these software companies actually have addiction experts that actually design addictive aspects into their product to get people to use it. So that's what it should say. Sorry, that was my typo, by the way. So I apologize.
Oh, I thought it kind of worked, but yeah, no, I see addiction.
Yeah.
Okay. Ken, thank you so much. And Steve, you get a kudo as well for having worked on the slides with us.